Chris Thomas. This video is about safe locations for the country of Mexico. But before we get into that, I wanted to cover a few things. I'm very busy, so if you send me an email or a Facebook chat thing or something, email I prefer. Actually, I prefer, believe it or not, audio contact over the telephone. It's because an email, you got to write all kinds of stuff down, and I'll do it, but I write a bunch of stuff down, and they say, "Oh no, we can't go there. We can't do this. We have this and that." This is just, you need a two-way dialogue in order to get the best out of a pole shift discussion or a safe location discussion with me. Now, if you say, "Is this town safe in this country?" Well, that's different. I can comment on that town. But if you're wondering where are safe locations, go ahead and send me an email. But you're better off to come up with some ideas as to where you'd like to go, where you can afford to move. Can you move countries? That's an important factor, especially if you're living in a dangerous area, like, for example, southern Mexico. You don't have to move countries if you're living in southern Mexico, but I'm saying if you're southern states, you're in the southern states, well, you can go to lots of places in the States. But what I'm trying to say, for example, the UK is going to be vastly reduced in size, and with it's going to be a difficult situation for a lot of people. So for those people who can leave the UK, for example, I would recommend it if you can do that. And not Europe, by the way. So these kinds of bits of information are critical in order for me to give good advice on where you could possibly move. Of course, the best possible advice ever is waking dreams. A waking dream is an experience while your eyes are open and walking around. You are awake. It's just not a sleep thing. Sleeping and waking are not a factor in dreams. The dream process is 24/7, 365, all your lifetime. The dream process is a constant flow. So it doesn't matter if you're asleep or awake. You're going to get the dreams. So understanding that daily events that stick out of the texture of your day, it could be that you're thinking about, maybe should I buy this thing that I need for the pole shift. And so if somebody passes in front of you, say, "Excuse me," and then they have on their, and you look back, and on the back of the T-shirt they say, "No way, Jose," or something like that, or it's just a black T-shirt. Black usually means death or no, but that's my opinion. But if you get like a textual note to your brain at that moment, often that's a waking dream telling you, no, don't do that. Or it could be a truck drives by and honks its horn, and you turn your attention to it just at that time. Around that time, you're thinking about whether you should do something important or not, and the truck says, "Go to northern Mexico." That's a waking dream. All these things are they're oversoul talking to you, telling you, giving you the best information for your life. That's the best way to determine safe location. Then you can call me or email me. I'll give you some advice about the locale, what have you, because every safe location, there's no safe location that is perfectly safe. You have to understand that. Unless you're living inside of a bunker, cement bunker on the Utah salt flats. It's like there's going to be no migrants. You've got your water and your stock and whatever. It's all good, right? But everything else, there's always layers and important things you have to look at: water movement, ground movement, sinkholes, forest fire, that kind of stuff. So, now this also, I want to mention that this video is only for people who are pole shift aware, or it's for the person who has been tweaked to the fact that the news media is distracting you from real things that are happening. I have a lot of Facebook contacts, and they send me stuff. You can see stuff that's happening all over, but I don't see it in the local news. You never see it in the big news. Big stuff is happening, and so there's a lot of cover-up going on. So for those people who have a sense that something's going on, but they don't quite know what, they know the politicians are lying. They know the government is doing a bunch of preparations, and they're moving stuff around and they're setting stuff up, and that you see it, but they're not saying what it is, why, and because they don't want the public to know that they're getting the governmental elite and the wealthy elite ready. They're setting up bunkers. For example, Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado has been stalked for a decade. The Ural Mountains have been set up for a safe location for the Russian government for a long time. The Chinese government has built what they call ghost cities in the Mongolian desert, and that's in readiness for the pole shift. So they're doing a whole lot of stuff, but they're not saying it. So the ultimate source, of course, for information, extremely dense, takes a lot of work, is Zeta Talk. Is by far the best site on the internet to get your information. Also, I recommend the newsletters, which you'll find at you'll find it under New Zeta Talk newsletters here. And this the latest gives you the latest what's going on behind the scenes. Now, as great as Zeta Talk is, they have no intention, and they say this many times, of holding your hand through the pole shift. They've given the world a framework of what's basically going to happen, and they've given us a lot of this information here about safe locations here that I draw on, and they've successfully and have made predictions over the years, since I think they're on the net since 1995. So they have a history of accurate predictions. Well, not predictions. They're predictions, and they turn out to be true. So, so if you want to know something, you can search here, but there is probably by now there's probably about 40,000 web pages. That's a guess, because I did a count a few years ago. It was 28,000 pages. That was like 4 years ago. So, I started my videos because I noticed that in various forums and stuff like that, that people had no clue about how to tell something that was a fact from a pile of BS that's being peddled by a government agent making a buck against the safety of the people of the world. They don't have a physics understanding. So and I see this, and I try to help best I can. This is back in the day, and I thought, nobody is well, I mean, certainly there's no question that Nancy Leader and the group and this and that and the website, that they do a good job, but I thought, well, I could be a little more compassionate, a little more personal, and also to bring my own sense of what I think is happening, based on physics and common sense. So that's how I got into making my videos. So if you contact me and you don't hear from me, send me another email, because I get distracted. I'm a one-man show here, and I work, I play, and I do this information, these videos, plus I answer lots of safe location questions. So I'm very, very busy. Consequently, I get distracted. So send me 2 emails if the first one doesn't register. So yeah, now just a word on disinformation. As I alluded to earlier, practically, I would hazard a guess, 99% of the information you see on the internet regarding Planet X or the pole shift is either a lie, it's either false assumptions made by a credulous mind. And there's a lot of that going on. They see one little bit of evidence and they blow it up into something, and then when they do that, they include all this disinformation stuff. Like, for example, the big one these days is the magnetic flip. It will be no magnetic flip. Ugh. Because the entire universe is magnetic and locked into a magnetic relationship. So if one thing changes, they all change together, and you'd never see the difference. So there's not going to be any magnetic flip. We're not talking about a pole flip either. The pole flip is a takeoff on the magnetic flip. There's not going to be any flipping. There's going to be what's called a crustal-shift or a pole shift. That's where the crust of Earth gets separated in the soft magma regions by a fast-moving highly magnetic powerhouse passing by very quickly, snatches the crust, pulls it up, and then you have a separation. Meanwhile, the magnetic core of Earth is locked on to the sun. The sun is a dominant magnet in the solar system. So the core more or less maintains this upright position, and the crust of Earth rotates over top of that. It comes to a stop. When it comes to a stop, the oceans of the world come inland for a visit. That's a euphemistic way of saying it's a very, very dangerous time. So this is why the governments I imagine the CIA, we used to call them the Planet X cover-up, is like a general term. Why they come up with this idea of a pole reversal? Because the concept is that, oh well, it's just a pole reversal. Might be a few earthquakes. It might be you can continue to have your favorite foods and go to work and have your comfortable life. That's what they want you to believe. It ain't going to be comfortable, trust me. We have to get ready for something big here. Bigger than we can imagine, in fact. So that is happening. So the next section I want to get into will be just explaining why it is that southern Mexico is extremely dangerous. In fact, is a death zone. So that'll be my next section. Okay, in this section of the video, I would like to explain why southern Mexico is so dangerous. This globe will be in conjunction with this image here. Okay, first we'll start here. This is the, if you follow my cursor, this is the South American continental plate. See, it's massive here. Now, its connection with Antarctica is rigid. So what will be happening, we know this through Zeta Talk, is that the Atlantic is widening and the Pacific is, they say shortening or compressing. Now I'll get into that in a minute. But the continental layout is also such that North America is locked also at the northern Canada with the Eurasian continent under the Arctic Ocean. So that's locked, and this is locked. So where does all the movement take place then? It's around the equator here. So we have I believe this is the Cuscus plate here, and we've got the Caribbean plate here. Now, because of the widening of the widening of the Atlantic and the shortening of the Pacific, South America is being forced to roll to the west. Now, this is putting the North American continent under a bow. Now, what I'm telling you now basically is information I've taken from Zeta Talk, and I'm explaining the physics. So, given that northern Canada, Alaska is locked, and South America is interfacing with North American plate, this is North American plate here, it's huge. So what happens is that, as I said, all the movement is taking place down here. So we'll get into why of the movement in a minute. But what is happening is this hook here, there's a hook, that's the portion of the South American plate that is pushing against the Caribbean plate, which pushes against just below the Yucatan Peninsula. And so that's what's going on, is this movement here. Now you can see it here. I've outlined it here, the whole plate here, and that's moving that way, and this is the result, but we'll get to that in a sec. So these small plates here and the Caribbean plate have to yield to the big action that's taking place by the very large major plates of the North American plate and the South American plate, in this case here. Now the Pacific will be pushed underneath the Andes and the Sierras and the Rockies, all down here, jammed underneath. How far, we'll get into in a minute. But according to Zeta Talk, which the good news for Mexico in general is that these plates here are softening the push against the what we call Mesoamerica, or the Central American countries down in here. Is softening it, so that's good news. We'll get into that. Whereas in the Rockies, like for example where I live up in here, this is global forces being pushed against the BC coast, but that's another video. In fact, I did a video on BC. But anyways, so we've got the softening of these plates here, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's just saying for Mexico in general, it's just but for these states in here, for these countries in here, it's the end of the world, is what it is. So let's switch to the globe. So as I said, this is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, 10,000 mile long mountain range made of cooled magma, which is full of iron and therefore magnetized. What it does is it creates a third magnet, which has its own magnetic field, of course, that emanates from the mountain range itself. Now, as Planet X approaches Earth, Earth is actually has to leave its orbit. At that time, when that happens, Earth has stopped rotating. Now, it's the rotation that's causing the issues with the moving continents and all that kind of. We'll get to that in a sec. But the actual pole shift itself, rather before the pole shift, Earth stops rotating, and according to history, this actually in history, if you know where to look, there's what they call the 6 days of darkness, and that's when Earth actually rolls over its North Pole away because of the magnetic forces coming from Nibiru. So that gives and it's stopped, so it's in darkness, right? So we roll it back up here. So we've got a magnetic signature emanating from the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Now, as each day, now imagine you looking at this globe are the sun. You are the sun looking at the Earth. And in fact, while you're at it, you can imagine that Planet X is just to your left and effectively sunward from Earth anyway. So you're also Planet X looking at Earth. Obviously, we're way back, right? At this point, we are, I don't know exactly, but I believe somewhere between 40 to 60 million miles away, Planet X is positioned. And as it moves, that's a complicated part of the video sometime. I think I covered that in one of my videos. But Earth, but as Planet X advances a few feet or a mile each day, Earth actually backs away. So Planet X advances a little bit more, Earth backs away, backs away, backs away, backs away, until it can't back away any further. And obviously, as it backs away, it's going to back out on its orbital track, isn't it? There's no reason to back up in a straight line. So as Earth backs up away from Planet X, it backs up on its orbital track. So the fact that Planet X is moving essentially in a straight line through the solar system. Why? Because it's obeying the sun's sun's particle flows and its other binary twin Foci, which is 68 trillion miles away. It's obeying those first. So it happens to be that it's a straight line trajectory. So since Planet X is moving in a straight line, at some point Earth is obviously going to move to the side because it's going on an arc away from and that's the point at where Planet X gets close enough to draw Earth out of its orbital track upwards towards it. Now, yeah, like so. So that's when the pole shift happens. Anyways, but I'm ahead of myself. So as Earth rotates, what happens is that each day when the Atlantic comes under the noonday sun, as it comes around, by the way, at that time, the North Magnetic Pole gets pushed back because it doesn't like the North Pole too close to it of Planet X. That's why the wobble as it rotates. So and then when it's in opposition, it starts to roll back. So it's this back and forth wobble that's causing the wild weather. But anyway, that's another. But there's a grab hold of the Earth's surface here by the magnetic signature of planet X, and that causes the centrifugal force of the rotating Earth to pull on the mid-Atlantic ridge area. It pulls on that. When that happens, it forces movement in all the fault lines and all the continental join areas, all the where they all join, and they all have been adjusting for years, and then of course at the same time there's a holdback on the west side, so effectively there's a spreading, and that compresses the globe in this direction like that. So that's causing all these you read about. If you're at all plugged in at all, you'll hear about, oh, the coastline in France it recently has sunk. That's right. It was in this region here, and here, and somehow. So it was the opposite. It was the coastline was exposed, so there was all the boats were in the bay were on the mud flats, and that was like a total big surprise to everybody there. That's because it's a temporary raising of this landform here. It's raised up, so it's not a well, it can't be. You can't have a super, like an exposed beach here, and be it the ocean. If it's the ocean, it would be exposed everywhere, pretty much around the world. No, it's local. That means the continent is rising. They're being pushed up. So these sorts of events are what is being caused by the pressure of the continents being compressed laterally around the globe. And this event actually happens in opposition as well, because magnetics aren't just one way. So it happens at noon over the Atlantic roughly, and then it also happens at midnight over the Pacific. Daytime over the Pacific. So it's happening twice a day. On top of that, you've got earth wobble going on as it rotates. You get earth wobble, and that's also causing other issues. That's more atmospheric and weather. So it's this pressure that is slowly causing the South American plate to roll westward. Southern U.S. is resisting it. So what happens? What's going to happen? So we have, let's switch pictures here. So we've got these forces in play. Now this is a bit overemphasized, and in fact it's not actually quite right because what happens is it doesn't go quite so far, but this is good for emphasis. But what happens is that it's the whole east coast of South America that's going to stretch, and this bay apparently is opening up already. But all these areas here are going to be stretched, so the continent will be bending actually. So we've got massive movement in southern Mexico, and worse, the Guatemalan, Honduras, Belize, and Panama are going to be subjected to a Caribbean plate being driven over it by this hook here on South America right there, moving that way. It's pushing the Caribbean plate, and drawing a little on how the Zetas were saying it, is that a whole mountain can be sheared off and end up in a valley. Whole valleys will just fold like that. You'll have, you might have some land that will rise up, be pushed up, and made into a huge lump, and then it'll just roll. So this, it's just, if you imagine a blanket on a table, a smooth table, and you were to push the blanket, and there's rumpling and rolling and tumbling in the blanket surface. That's what's going to be happening to these countries in here. Now, this portion of this South American plate here, this hook I call it, is not going to make it all the way to south of the Yucatan in this area here. So what you get is rumpling and movement that's I would say next to impossible to survive. And afterwards, apparently, we are going to have an ocean here. So it's just going to be a grind and tumble and sinking of these countries. Now, what happens in this zone here? Well, I've labeled this area here, down in here, below the red mark, as a death zone. Now, as it happens, we'll get into my big map next, because that gives better detail. So that is how things occur. One interesting thing I want to make note of is the positions of the new South Pole and new North Pole. So if you look at the current position of the North Mag, which is about 300, 400 miles offset from the actual geographical north, spin axis, geographical north. And if you keep your eye on North Mag pole, the North Pole there, as they roll the globe, it goes out of view. And then we have the South Mag here. Now, as it happens, the South Magnetic Pole is 1,800 miles opposite of, rather offset from the actual South Pole, which is quite interesting because, you know, there's all this furor about the moving North Mag, but there's no talk about the moving South Mag. Probably is, but my guess is that the North Magnetic Pole is moving more because Planet X's North Pole is facing Earth, almost facing Earth, pointed at Earth, roughly speaking. So it's moving more. That's why I think. But anyways, I'm off topic. So what? Now, if you see the difference between the distance between there and here. Now let's rotate the globe so they're even closer. Okay, right there. So even here, you've got, there it is there, and roll the globe, goes out of view. And then along comes the South Magnetic Pole. So there's that distance there. You can't see it unless you rotate the globe. Now look at the distance between the new South Pole and the new North Pole. You can see it south of India and off the bulge of Brazil. Why? That's because the Atlantic is widening by, I did this measurement, about 6,000 kilometers. That's the type of forces that are being applied to these mountain ranges here. So remember that when we get into my other map. That type of force is forcing these plates underneath these, and that's why you have the Andes Mountains and the Rocky. That's why they're so high, because of prior pole shifts driving the Pacific underneath these continents. Now, after the pole shift, I predict that wherever the North Magnetic Pole ends up at, probably somewhere around here, that now you have to understand that the crust of Earth is going to rotate over top, so the inner core is going to remain more or less stable. I know it moves to a certain point, but the crust separates, so the whole outer rim, the whole outer shell of Earth rotates, and the North Mag will more or less stay upright. So what happens is it'll ascribe during the process, as it were, is going to scribe a magnetic line from there to here, as it were, because it will rotate like that, and that becomes the new North Pole. Now, it's my belief that the existing magnetic North Pole, that point, will be the new North Pole. There will be no offset. Why? Because there will be because it'll be the magnetic points that determine the new poles, not any spin axis. The spin axis will spin around the magnetic points, and I believe that also the new South Pole will adjust to be more or less opposite of the North Magnetic Pole. Right now, there's quite a difference in offset, right? 1,800 miles and 400 miles. Anyways, it's a subtle point. Because when there's no magnetic monster in the solar system, then you can have magnetic poles all over them. You can have them offset all over because there's nothing to affect it. But when you get the magnetic monster passing increasingly close to Earth, the Earth starts to roll and tumble as it right. So when it leaves, there'd be no reason for rolling tumbling. It's going to find a new axis, and that axis, I believe, will be in line with the new magnetic pole opposites each other at roughly a 23 angle, I guess, because all the forces that have been in play for billions of years are just temporarily upset or changed by Planet X. Once Planet X leaves, the pole shift happens, all the other forces all come back into play, and everything becomes smooth, more or less smooth again. So that's my little bit on that. Okay, so now we're going to move from this discussion into talking about specific events and situations and places and things like that for the country of Mexico, safe locations. Okay, in this section I'm going to cover all the places that are dangerous in Mexico. Just as an addendum here, when I discuss safe locations, it's just geological, and it's strictly to do with land movement and dangers from the ocean. So it's and possible weather and volcanic influences, and so it's up to the individual to determine culturally or whether or not an area is going to be safe from migrant attention, or in the case of Mexico, gang or criminal attention. I mean, I do discuss it in my ratings and stuff like that, but it's something a person must take responsibility for. I'm happy to make some offer my opinions on safety locations regarding migrants and that kind of thing. Basically, it's just don't be seen. Don't be on a major road. If you buy a nice body of fresh water, don't set up on the shore, because they're going to see you. A lot of it's just common sense. You don't want to be seen, and you don't want to be heard, and you don't want to be smelled either. You don't want to do any outdoor barbecues where you've got smells wafting. Now, I should have looked into it, but the big problem in the States and in Canada are bears, and they can smell food 20 miles away. So that's not a good thing. So I recommend burying garbage, and you do all this really careful stuff for the first few years of the aftertime. And it's after that when all the gangs have killed each other off, and the criminals have killed each other off, and and just communities become more cohesive and more just more developed. Then that's when life can sort of get into more of a natural flow. But until then, you gotta really be careful not to be seen. That's my basic information. I have other information that I might as well cover now, and that is that I just don't believe you can set up in a house on a street somewhere in some town and build a bunker out back and jump into the bunker before the pole shift and come out after the pole shift and start fixing things up. Now, there might be situations where people have that happen. I highly doubt it, because you have flying rock, you've got hurricane winds. I think any house, any wooden house built today, I know that many homes in Mexico are brick or adobe, which brick is just as bad. They're just gonna flat. But anyways, so I often suggest, really, if you have land, just think, and a house, just think of that house being gone after the pole shift, burning, destroyed, and just buy a prefab home of some kind and bury it and protect it, cover it with 2 or 3 tarps, and cover it with 3 or 4 feet of soil and whatever, but just protect it for the pole shift. And then after the pole shift, get out your big tent and get things going, and then you can, in a few days, a few weeks, you can start setting up your new home. Or maybe you have a home that you can rebuild, and you have those skills, and you have the lumber and the material in storage. That's cool too. Now, people who are moving to new areas, I recommend buy the land you want. Don't worry about if it has a house on it. I know everyone's got to live before the pole shift. In my opinion, you should get a trailer. Up here in Canada, they're giving them away, old RVs and trailers, free. So you can live in one of those until the pole shift. It's only 3 years. Excuse me. So, regardless, focus on the land and your after-time buildings that are buried. And then the other option I had was suggested is that you move to a town somewhere and you rent in the town. Meanwhile, you divert your funds to actually buying land out of town and some safe location and set up there in a similar fashion. So that's just some ideas I wanted to mention. Okay, so back to Mexico. So we have the death zone here. So that's where the Caribbean plate is just going to grind over these countries here. So this is likely to be ocean. There will be ocean, actually. Now, the Yucatan Peninsula will be overwashed. That's why it's got this cover on it. So that's not safe at all. Even though, if it was high enough, it would be a fantastic location, but it won't be. It's going to be washed over. Now, having said that, you can see here that in the aftertime there will be an area here. There might be, let me put it that way, because this might be pushed down a bit, but this was a fairly high little section here that might be available. But then if you're in southern Mexico in this area, you might, I don't think you can see it, but you may have to go take a trip out there to see if it's there. It'd be a great little location if it's for the after time, like after things settle down. But for the pole shift, no. So now we have all these volcanoes that I've marked off in this area. We call this a volcanic province. Now, normally I say this is just off limits, but we have a direction of wind. We know that the wind will be blowing in this direction. This is because essentially this will be the 30-degree north latitude, so the winds will sweep in this direction, and conversely for the Pacific in this direction here, like that. So this will blow all the volcanic ash from these young volcanoes out into this new area in the Pacific here. That's why I've got these tails here, trash tails, ash drop flows. Now, typically what I used to say is, well, this is just out of it because of possibly circulating winds, maybe in this area here, but over here the winds would be pretty consistent. So for example, if you are situated in one of these towns here, Tulsa, Ziquero, Morelia, likely it would be survivable. Now this is not talking about massive rain and mudslides and flash flooding. You have to be on high land. This is the where the common sense comes in. All these low areas are going to be subject to that. But if you're up on a mountain or a rock, whatever, a large a mountain range here, then it's doable as long as you're not too close to the volcano, just in case the storm was to come in and maybe circulate hot ash your way. But that's why I drew these in, so that you could get a sense of, well, if I'm here, I might be okay. And ultimately, really, you really should be relying on your dreams to tell you about whether something is safe or not. They'll get pretty seriously heavy duty. If you're at all, if you can observe your day in a calm, observing kind of way, if you can do that, then those dreams would be very, very clear. So that's why I drew it this way, so that, again, so that if you do live in these areas, then you can check your dreams and it might be okay to stay here, because it will be a cool place to be, no question. I'm kind of heavy duty on this, but really, the news is good for Mexico. So we have definite areas here along the coast here that, maybe down this far up might be okay to live eventually. But meanwhile, we've got this. Now I drew this 100-mile strip here. This volcanic. This. What do I call it? I call it mountain building danger death zone. 100 miles from the coast, and it's strictly to do with the vibrating and the hot earth that is caused by the subducting plates. So if you're on a valley bottom in these areas here, close to the coast like that, then you could find that the ground you're standing on is too hot to stand on, or in fact in some cases actually melting. So but I understand that the subduction in Mexico on the coast won't be as rough and tumble as it will be for the Sierras. I'm talking about the U.S. in the U.S. up here, but for these mountains here, it's apparently going to be less so of an issue. However, it's still a danger zone because you've got a lot of vibrating going on. That means falling rock. And my guess is that if you're just on the outer edge or within the outer edge here, you might be okay. Again, consult your dreams. Let your dreams talk to you about there. Certainly not here, because obviously the pole wash. Now this blue in here is only from the pole melt. So the Zeta talk, they say you need to be 100 miles inland and 200 feet in elevation, which is no problem for this area. So, or you can be 50 miles inland at 400 feet elevation. You probably can't push it to 25 miles inland and 800 feet in elevation. That might be pushing it a bit because of seawater funneling. Because the waves coming from the Pacific are not just waves. They're wave fronts. So this is not an earthquake disturbance that causes a big wave that washes into a bay or against some area, where it's a large wave, or they call them tsunamis. This is not tsunami. This is wave front. So a wave will rise. The elevation goes up and then down, but a wave front goes up and it stays up for maybe an hour, half an hour. So all that water is flowing the same onto the land. So it's a wave front of a mass of water. So it's a very different scenario from a wave. So that's why seawater funneling, the seawater when it hits a valley, it comes into a valley. So we can get into that. It's a pretty detailed. Not enough detail. Let's switch to a map. Okay, this is the current west coast of Mexico. Okay, here's a good example here. You see, this is essentially a valley through here. Here, like that. You follow the cursor. And here's another one. There. Right through there. Or this one's even more pronounced here. So the seawater will fill up here and will quickly find its way along this valley and push up, because the confines of the valley increases the velocity of the wave and will push it up into the mountains here, in the mountain valley like that, like fingers pushing up like that. Can you see, if you hope you can see the cursor. So it'll push up into the mountains like that, the valley. Push up through here like that. So you could be you know, within the 100-mile area. And so, and in the valley, typically roads are on the valley. Look, well, anyway, I don't know if there's any roads along here, but anyways, I'm not going to switch to a map. But the idea is that you want to be, if you're going to be in these mountains, in that danger zone, you want to be on a mountain top, not you have to retreat to a mountain top ridge here, all these top ridges, and just cross your fingers that your homestead or whatever is going to survive. You want to be up on the top here. Now, if you're outside of that area here, then you're pretty much okay, because that's 100 miles here, and you're way high in elevation. So that's why I say it kind of might work in just inside the danger zone there. If you're there, you can't move, you got family, you got whatever, and your dreams are telling you that it's okay to stay. If you don't get the dreams and you can move, then you should move. So we've got the danger zone there. The Baja Peninsula will overwash, so it's not at all safe there. After the pole shift, yeah, be good. There will be a rip zone up here. There's some cinder cone volcano sets here that are 11,000 years old. These ones here are young. These will all go off, and for many decades. This one might blow a bit of ash and stuff, but if it does, it'll blow it that way, blow it up the valley there, because of the direction of the winds. But it won't be as bad because it's an older. It's under. Well, I don't know if I said it, but it's 11,000 years old. These are 10,000 or newer. So this is not likely to be a problem, but it could. So now, initially I labeled this area as dangerous ground movement because of the U.S. continental divide is a massive push, including BC, and up into the Northwest Territories here, all down here, is a massive push by the mountain ranges over the plains, and I believe there's a 50-mile to 100-mile danger zone down here like that, especially through the states here, because the forces are much stronger here. But due to the plates and the conditions of Mexico, it's, as I said earlier, it's the pressure is somewhat softened. So that danger zone there is it's just a cautionary. So if you are situated for example, and I'm going to take a guess. I can't speak foreign languages, so please be forgiving. But it looks like Palau to me, or Palau. So if you're living in Palau, I would watch your dreams very carefully. I wouldn't trust those mountain ranges during a massive that close there. If you're in Sabinus or Sabinus, I don't know, Sabinus, then it might be a little safer because you're farther from the mountains there. So as an example there, that's I would, so on this inner edge here, I think it would be more dangerous than in the center or towards the. Now this is a 50-mile zone here, so I hope that's clear. So if you're living near the edge, I would move. Now, so that's that movement here will be slightly reduced from what I was originally thinking, and I've covered that. Now, also when I do my videos, I also get I virtually get instruction from my oversoul. It just depending on the situation. I'll have a dream, and I'll wake up, and I go, like, what was that about? And I'll be analyzing the dream, and then sometimes I'll have it just explained to me. That's kind of rare. Usually I do a little bit of work on it, trying to figure out what it means, and then I'll get a confirmation from my oversoul. And one of those dreams was that the border with the U.S. and Mexico is going to be crowded here. Now, somebody might say, well, obviously. Not to my mind. I don't know. But this is what I got. Crowded border. Now, what does that mean? That means lots of people, no food or little food, especially early on. No food. It means desperate people. That means danger. That also means people are going to be eating bad food and drinking bad water, and will be getting communicable diseases and get sick, which in the aftertime can mean death. So that's why this is yellow. It's a warning to stay away from the border zone. Now, moving on, I was originally thinking that, well, the 30-degree latitude is a bit, the airflow is circular somewhat, and I was originally thinking that would make BC dry, but Mexico dry. But on second thought and reading more on Zeta Talk and some more examination, I agree with the Zetas that the coasts here will have lots of rain. That means you got heat and you got lots of rain, and similar with the Pacific here, that'll be allowing rain to fall up in here. So that also means rain and heat as well. So it means lush growth. So and good growing conditions. I don't know about the soil. You'll probably have to work the soil up. But it certainly is good news for people living in Mexico with the increased water coming in from the greatly expanded Gulf here. Now this is a permanent elevation sea loss. So this is new ocean here. So that'll bring lots of rain here and rain here. So that's a very good sign for Mexico there. I would think that maybe central northern would be the drier, but certainly going to be much better than it is now. So we have, so I think we've covered most of it here. So you've got quite a bit of contiguous safe location. Big block of safe location here. So the news is good for Mexico. Stay hidden, and don't forget, first 6 months at least after time, you'll need to not go out during the day because of the ultraviolet radiation from the sun, because Earth loses, I believe, something like about 60% of its atmosphere, exposing the surface of Earth to much more ultraviolet radiation, which is very dangerous and is deadly actually. So the suggestion is 6 months to a year, work at night and sleep during the day, and you'll see the difference as the clouds become higher and higher in the sky. That's an indication that the atmosphere is expanding back to its original size. Stay hidden from migrants and don't let them into your camp. Use waking dreams. That's why waking dreams are so important. If a person is approaching you, approaching your camp, and you know, maybe they're coming through the trees, and then as soon as you see them, they're wearing a white something, and the light shines on them and gives them a glow. Well, that's a positive sign. That's a positive waking dream. That person is okay. And then, but if as soon as you see them approaching, this is a very crude, simple thing, but you can take it and work with it. The person approaching the camp, and you're thinking, oh my God, right? And then as soon as you see them, they walk into a shadow of something, and they become shadowed. That's a bad sign. So use those waking dreams, work them, because they'll tell you what to do. So that's Mexico, best I can handle, best I can do for now. And so if you have any questions, put them in the comments section below on the video. And thanks for watching, and good luck for the pole shift. This is Chris Wakefield, signing off for now. Thank you.